Welcome back to the Book of Books. In this episode, we open a sacred subject, the moment of ascension. What truly happens in the space between a final breath and eternity? What does the soul experience when it leaves the body? Why do the living feel the weight of loss while the spirit steps into freedom? Tonight, we journey beyond the veil, exploring life flashes before death, near-death experiences, the mystery of light and messengers, the promise prepared for the righteous, and the special covering reserved for the innocent. This is not speculation. This is reflection. This is revelation through understanding. So settle your mind, quiet the noise, and open your spirit, because what you believe about death will shape how you live. This is the moment of ascension. Moment of Ascension, Chapter 1. The separation when the spirit lifts. There is a moment that no clock can measure. A final breath leaves the body, but something else begins. In the physical realm, it appears as stillness. The chest no longer rises, the pulse fades, the warmth slowly withdraws. Those standing near the bedside feel the weight of silence, as if the air itself has thickened. Machines may hum, tears may fall, a hand may still be held, hoping for movement that will not come. But what is seen in the third dimension is only one side of the event. The body is earthly. It is formed from dust, sustained by breath, governed by time. It feels pain. It ages, it weakens, it breaks down. Illness clings to it. Fatigue burdens it. Injury limits it. The spirit, however, is not bound in the same way. When the moment of ascension arrives, the separation begins. The body releases what it was never meant to hold permanently. The breath that once animated flesh withdraws from its temporary dwelling. To those watching, it looks like loss. To the one departing, it feels like release. Accounts from those who have returned from the brink of death often describe the same pattern. A lifting, a lightness, an absence of pain. Individuals who were once confined by failing organs, weakened limbs, or suffocating illness suddenly describe clarity. They report awareness without weight, consciousness without restriction. Time seems to behave differently in this transition. What takes seconds in the physical realm may feel expansive in the spiritual. The boundary between worlds thins, not violently, but gently. This is the separation. The body remains. The spirit ascends. The pain that tormented the physical frame does not follow. Disease does not cling to what is not flesh. Cancer does not travel beyond the cells. Dementia does not cloud what is not brain. Broken bones do not bind what is not bone. In that instant, suffering tied to matter ends. Those left behind may cry. They are gone, but from the perspective of the spirit, they are not gone. They are no longer confined. This separation has been misunderstood because humanity measures reality only by what can be touched. Yet the unseen has always existed alongside the visible. Just as wind cannot be grasped but can be felt, the spirit cannot be weighed but can be experienced. The transition is not chaos, it is order. The Most High does not abandon creation at its final breath. The same authority that formed life governs its departure. There is no wandering accident, no lost soul drifting without awareness. The separation is structured, intentional. Some who sit beside the dying have witnessed something remarkable. An elderly parent begins speaking to someone unseen. A fading voice whispers, "They are here." A smile appears where fear once lived. The eyes fixate beyond the room, beyond the ceiling, beyond the walls. To the family, it may appear as confusion, but often it is not confusion, it is recognition. The spirit begins perceiving what the physical body can no longer contain. The veil thins before the final breath. It is as if the spiritual senses awaken before the body fully shuts down. Light may be described. Loved ones long departed may be mentioned. A calm overtakes a person who hours earlier was restless or afraid. This is not fantasy for comfort's sake. It is a pattern repeated across cultures, across hospitals, across testimonies separated by geography and belief. The body fades slowly. The spirit prepares swiftly, and when the final breath arrives, it is not a violent tearing but a gentle unfastening, like a garment laid down, like a cage opened, like a traveler stepping across a border. In the third dimension, we experience the echo of separation as grief. We feel absence because our senses are tied to physical presence. We reach for hands that are no longer warm. We call names that are not answered. But the spirit is not in darkness. It is not trapped in pain. It is not suspended in fear. The ascension is not annihilation. It is transition. This truth does not erase the sorrow of those who remain, but it reframes it. The one who has ascended is no longer suffering the burdens that once pressed against their flesh. The hospital bed is empty. The medication is no longer needed. The labored breathing has ceased. What ended was suffering. What ended was limitation. What ended was confinement. The separation is sacred, and though the living feel the sharp edge of goodbye, the one who has ascended feels something entirely different: freedom, the weight of the third dimension. When the spirit ascends, the one who departs experiences release, but those who remain experience weight. The third dimension is heavy. It is governed by touch, sight, and sound. It relies on physical presence. We recognize love through proximity. We measure connection through voice, laughter, embrace. When a body is no longer present, the senses interpret it as absence, and absence hurts. Grief is not weakness. It is the shock of separation in a realm that depends on matter. The chair is empty. The phone no longer rings. The familiar footsteps are silent. The routines that once revolved around a person must now rearrange themselves around a void. In this dimension, death feels final because the body is what we knew. We kissed the forehead. We held the hand. We heard the breathing. We watched the chest rise and fall. When those signs cease, the mind struggles to comprehend continuity beyond them. But grief is not proof of annihilation. It is proof of attachment. The pain of loss does not mean the spirit is lost. It means the bond was real. In the third dimension, love is expressed physically. So when the physical is removed, love has nowhere obvious to land. It feels suspended. It feels unfinished. It feels like something has been interrupted. Yet nothing has been interrupted in the spirit. What has changed is location, not existence. The Most High designed human beings to operate within time and space. We wake, we sleep, we age. We move forward in a line we call life. But the spirit is not confined to the same linear progression. What feels like gone forever to us may be arrived ahead in a realm beyond clocks. Still, the sorrow is real. It is important to acknowledge that grief is not a lack of faith. Even the righteous mourn. Tears are not rebellion against divine order. They are the human response to transition. When someone we love ascends, our world shifts. Familiar structures collapse. We must learn how to exist in a reality that no longer includes their physical presence. That adjustment is painful. The third dimension magnifies loss because it is sensory. We see reminders everywhere: clothing in the closet, a favorite cup in the cabinet, a voicemail still saved in a phone. These objects anchor memory to matter, and matter is what we can touch. But spirit does not depend on matter to continue. The difficulty lies in our perspective. We stand on one side of the veil and call it separation. From our vantage point, the distance feels immeasurable. We imagine darkness because we cannot see beyond it. Yet throughout history, countless testimonies suggest that the veil is thinner than we assume. Those near death often speak as if they're already perceiving another realm. Some describe a profound calm moments before their final breath. Others speak to unseen visitors with clarity and familiarity. In hospitals across the world, nurses quietly acknowledge a pattern. A dying patient becomes peaceful just before passing, as if something unseen has arrived. To the family, it looks like departure. To the spirit, it may feel like welcome. Still, the living must walk through grief. Grief is the body's way of adjusting to spiritual reality it cannot yet perceive. It is the mind catching up to what the spirit already understands, that life does not end at the border of breath. The third dimension teaches permanence through visibility. If we cannot see it, we assume it no longer exists. But this assumption is rooted in limitation. Air exists though it is unseen. Gravity acts though it is invisible. Sound waves travel though they cannot be held. How much more then could consciousness continue beyond flesh? The weight we feel is not because the departed is suffering. It is because we are adjusting to absence. An adjustment takes time. In this dimension, time is the healer. Not because it erases memory, but because it reshapes pain. The sharpness dulls. The tears lessen in frequency. The memories become less piercing and more warm. The love remains, but it shifts from immediate touch to internal presence. The one who ascended is no longer bound by illness or limitation, but we remain bound to time. So we mourn, we remember, we learn to live with the echo of their existence rather than their physical form. The pain of the third dimension is not evidence that death is cruel. It is evidence that love was deep, and love does not end when the body does. It simply changes how it is experienced. Chapter 3. The Light and the Messengers. There is a quiet phenomenon that repeats itself in hospital rooms across the world. An elderly woman, weak from days without food, suddenly lifts her head and smiles at someone no one else can see. A grandfather who has not spoken clearly in weeks begins describing a familiar face standing near the window. A mother whispers, "They're here, though the room is still." Family members often assume confusion. Doctors may attribute it to medication. Nurses sometimes remain silent but observant, having witnessed this pattern more times than they can count. But the pattern remains. As the body weakens, something else seems to strengthen. It is as if the physical senses dim while spiritual perception brightens. The eyes no longer focus well on the room, yet they seem fixed on something beyond it. Fear that once gripped the heart softens into calm. Agitation gives way to peace. Many describe light, not harsh light, not blinding light, but warm light, inviting light, a presence that feels familiar rather than foreign. Across cultures and beliefs, accounts echo the same elements: light, figures, loved ones, peace, invitation. This does not appear chaotic. It does not resemble terror. It often resembles recognition. Recognition suggests preparation. If the spirit is preparing to ascend, it would not be unreasonable to consider that assistance accompanies that transition. Just as life began with order, so too would its departure. The Most High does not create without structure. The same authority that governs birth governs departure. There is nothing accidental about the crossing between dimensions. Some traditions describe messengers, others describe guides. Some speak of angels. The language may differ, but the theme remains consistent. The departing are not alone. Consider the repeated reports of individuals who, moments before death, call out to relatives who have already passed. They speak their names clearly. They reach their hands upward. They smile. To those in the room, it may seem like imagination, but imagination rarely brings such deep peace to someone moments from death. It is important to approach this carefully, not as sensationalism, not as superstition, but as observation. When similar experiences emerge across geography, language, and background, they deserve reflection. Light appears again and again in near-death accounts. People who briefly cross the threshold and return often describe a radiance unlike physical light. They say it feels alive, intelligent, loving, a presence rather than an object. Time behaves differently in these accounts. What takes seconds in the hospital room feels expansive in the experience. There is awareness without pain, identity without confusion. And often, there is a choice or an understanding that it is not yet time to remain. If such reports are even partially accurate, they suggest something profound. The moment of ascension is not darkness. It is transition into greater clarity. The third dimension is limited by walls, ceilings, and distance. The spiritual realm is not bound in the same way. What we perceive as empty space may be layered with realities our senses cannot detect. As the body approaches its end, it may no longer filter what the spirit begins to perceive. This could explain why some individuals appear to see beyond before their final breath. It is not that they are leaving early. It may be that they are seeing clearly for the first time without the interference of flesh. and what they often see brings comfort. Peace replaces fear. Recognition replaces confusion. Light replaces shadow. If messengers exist, and countless traditions affirm they do, then it would follow that the transition between realms is guided, not abandoned. The Most High is not absent at death. If anything, the presence becomes more immediate. To the family, the room feels heavy with sorrow. To the departing, the room may already feel distant. This explains the strange calm that sometimes settles over a person minutes before passing. The struggle ceases, the breathing evens, the expression softens. It is as if they are listening to something no one else can hear. The veil thins, the light approaches, and the messengers stand ready. The body may still lie in the hospital bed, but the spirit is already aware of home. Chapter 4. The flash of a lifetime. There are moments when time collapses. Survivors of near-death experiences often describe something extraordinary, a sudden unfolding of memory, not in fragments, but in fullness. Not slow, not sequential, but instantaneous. A life, entire decades, revealed in what feels like a single breath. They speak of seeing their childhood, their mistakes, their kindness, their cruelty, their love, their indifference, not as distant memories, but as living realities. Every word spoken, every act committed, every intention behind every action, not replayed like a movie, experienced. Many describe feeling not only their own emotions, but the emotions of those they affected, the pain they caused, the comfort they offered, the ripple effect of their existence. This phenomenon is often called a life review. It is not reported as condemnation, it is reported as clarity. Time in the third dimension moves in one direction, forward. We remember the past, but cannot re-enter it. We anticipate the future, but cannot experience it. We are bound by sequence, but in the spiritual realm, sequence may not apply the same way. If the spirit is not governed by clocks, then memory may not be stored as linear segments, but as a complete whole. When the body begins to release its hold, that stored life may surface at once, unfiltered. This could explain the phrase often heard, "My life flashed before my eyes," not as poetry, as reality. In that flash, there is understanding, understanding of choices, understanding of consequences, understanding of intention. This suggests something profound about accountability. The Most High does not need lengthy arguments to judge. The truth of a life may be self-evident when seen without distortion, when ego is stripped away, when excuses fall silent, when pride no longer shields the heart. In such clarity, a person would not need to be told what they have done. They would see it, and more importantly, they would understand it. Yet those who describe these experiences rarely speak of terror. Many speak of overwhelming love, even while becoming aware of their flaws. They describe a presence that is just but not cruel, illuminating but not humiliating. This matters. Justice without mercy would be unbearable. Mercy without justice would be meaningless. The life review appears to contain both. There is truth, but there is also understanding. Some recount sensing that growth continues beyond this moment, that the purpose of seeing one's life in full is not only judgment, but refinement. Recognition leads to transformation. If this is true, then death is not an abrupt ending. It is a revealing of who we truly were when stripped of reputation and appearance. In the third dimension, we curate identity. We manage impressions. We hide motives behind smiles. We explain away selfishness. We justify harm. But in the moment of ascension, there is no audience to impress, only truth. This reality should not inspire fear, but awareness. If life will be seen clearly one day, then how we live now matters deeply. Every word spoken in anger, every act of kindness done in secret, every quiet sacrifice, every hidden cruelty, nothing disappears. Not because the Most High is searching for faults, but because existence leaves imprint. The flash of a lifetime suggests that our actions carry weight beyond the moment. that nothing is meaningless, that love matters, that harm matters. And if life is reviewed in an instant, then perhaps we are not as bound to time as we believe. Perhaps consciousness holds more than we understand. Some who return from near-death experiences say they were given the choice to stay or return. Others say they were told it was not yet their time. But almost all report that the clarity they experienced reshaped how they live afterward. They return changed, less afraid of death, more aware of consequence, more intentional with love. If the flash of a lifetime is real, even in part, then the moment of ascension is not chaos, it is revelation. And revelation prepares the spirit for what comes next, because once a life has been seen in full, the soul stands in truth, and truth is the doorway to eternity. Chapter 5, The Innocent and the Prepared Place. There is no question heavier than this one. What of the innocent? What of the child who never reached maturity? What of the infant who never spoke? What of the young life interrupted before it understood good and evil? In the third dimension, such loss feels unbearable. It feels unjust. It feels unfinished. The mind struggles to reconcile innocence with death. Grief in these moments is not only sorrow, it is confusion. But confusion belongs to the limitations of our perspective. The Most High is not limited. If justice exists at all, it must be greater than human systems. If mercy exists at all, it must be purer than human emotion. The one who formed consciousness understands capacity. Accountability implies awareness. Responsibility implies choice. An infant has not chosen rebellion. A toddler has not constructed corruption. A child has not fully developed the discernment required for moral defiance. Innocence is not ignorance. It is untested purity. If the moment of ascension includes clarity, revelation, and truth for those who lived long lives, how much more would it include protection for those who never had the opportunity to form one? The prepared place for the innocent is not speculation born from emotion. It flows from the nature of the Most High. He is just. He is merciful. He does not confuse immaturity with rebellion. The third dimension measures worth by productivity, achievement, years lived. But eternity does not measure by calendar length. It measures by essence. A short life is not a small life. A brief presence is not meaningless. Some lives are not given decades because their purpose was never tied to duration. Their existence may awaken love in others, strengthen families, reveal compassion, expose fragility, teach dependence on what is eternal rather than temporary. But the child who ascends does not ascend into loss. They ascend into wholeness. They are not suspended in confusion. They are not wandering in darkness. They are not judged by standards they never possessed the capacity to meet. If the life review exists for the mature, what review would there be for one who never had the opportunity to act with moral agency? There would be none needed. There is nothing to condemn in purity untested. This does not remove the grief of the parent. It does not erase the ache in the chest or the silence in the nursery. The third dimension feels the absence sharply. But the spirit realm does not operate by earthly tragedy. The child is not frozen in infancy. The child is not trapped in vulnerability. The spirit is not limited by the age of the body it temporarily inhabited. What ascends is not incomplete. It is received. Many who have experienced near-death events speak of encountering children who radiate joy, not confusion. Peace, not fear. These testimonies cannot be proven by laboratory measure. Yet their consistency cannot be dismissed easily either. The nature of the Most High does not abandon innocence. If he prepares a place for the righteous, how much more for the pure? If mercy extends to those who repent late in life, how much more to those who never had the chance to choose wrongdoing deliberately? The grief of losing a child in the third dimension is among the deepest human pains. It feels unnatural because it is. Death was never designed to feel comfortable. Separation was never meant to feel easy, but ascension for the innocent is not loss. It is immediate restoration. No sickness follows them, no trauma attached to them, no confusion clouds them. They do not awaken to judgment, they awaken to light. And for the parents who remain, the ache is real, but it is not hopeless. The separation is temporary from the eternal perspective. Time feels long here. It does not function the same there. The Most High does not mishandle innocence. The prepared place is not reserved only for the accomplished or the aged. It is prepared for the pure. And the innocent do not arrive alone. They are received. Chapter 6. The Righteous and the Just. Not all ascensions are the same in experience, but they are consistent in order. For the righteous and the just, death is not an ambush. It is an appointment. This does not mean the body does not weaken. It does not mean illness does not occur. Even the faithful grow old. Even the disciplined feel pain. Even the obedient face mortality. But there is often a difference in the spirit. Those who have lived consciously before the Most High tend to approach the moment of ascension with a different posture. Not always perfectly, not without human fear, but with readiness. Readiness is not arrogance, it is alignment. A person who has lived in awareness of eternity does not experience death as a foreign concept. They have already accepted that the body is temporary. They have already considered accountability. They have already sought forgiveness where needed. They have already humbled themselves before truth. When the life flash comes, if it comes, it does not introduce unknown reality. It confirms what was already understood. The righteous are not sinless. They are surrendered. The just are not flawless. They are aligned with truth. There is a quiet peace often observed in those who approach death having reconciled their lives. They may gather family close. They may give final words. They may express gratitude. They may even reassure those who are weeping. I'm ready. Those words are not denial. They are recognition. Recognition that the third dimension was never permanent. Recognition that this was always a journey. Recognition that the moment of ascension is not collapse, but crossing. Many caregivers and family members have observed something remarkable, a calm settling over the faithful near the end. The struggle in their eyes softens. The fear dissipates. There is a stillness that feels intentional rather than forced. It is as if the spirit is already leaning toward what is coming. The Most High prepares a place, not metaphorically, but intentionally. Preparation implies planning. Planning implies certainty. There is no improvisation in divine order. The righteous do not ascend into confusion. They ascend into fulfillment. Every act of hidden kindness, every quiet prayer, every resisted temptation, every forgiveness offered when it was difficult, nothing was unseen. The third dimension often rewards pride and punishes humility. It elevates noise and overlooks quiet obedience. But eternity reverses many scales. The just may not always have been celebrated on earth, but they are not overlooked beyond it. The moment of ascension for the righteous is not terror before judgment. It is clarity before confirmation, not perfection being displayed, but faithfulness being acknowledged. If life flashes before the eyes, it does not condemn them without context. Mercy accompanies truth. Growth is recognized. Repentance matters. The Most High does not search for reasons to reject. He searches for alignment with righteousness. And where righteousness has been pursued sincerely, even imperfectly, there is peace in departure. This does not mean that those left behind do not grieve. Even when an elderly believer passes peacefully, tears still fall. The third dimension still feels the absence. The home still feels quieter. But there is a difference between grieving without hope and grieving with assurance. Hope transforms sorrow. It does not eliminate it, but it steadies it. The righteous do not ascend alone. They do not wander. They do not drift in uncertainty. They are received into what was prepared long before their first breath. And when the final breath leaves their body, it is not the end of their story. It is the completion of their earthly chapter. The next one was already written. Chapter 7. Beyond the veil, what follows the ascension. When the final breath leaves the body, something immediate happens. There is no pause in consciousness, no drifting into nothingness, no suspension in blank silence. If the spirit is life itself, then it does not cease when the body does. It transitions. The veil, thin as it may be, is crossed. For those who ascend, awareness does not disappear. In fact, many accounts suggest it sharpens. Colors appear more vivid. Understanding becomes immediate. Communication does not rely on spoken words. Recognition happens without introduction. The limitations of flesh fall away. The spirit is no longer confined to a heartbeat, no longer regulated by oxygen, no longer restrained by gravity. What follows ascension is not darkness, it is expansion. Expansion of perception. Expansion of clarity. Expansion of presence. Throughout generations, those who have briefly crossed and returned speak of overwhelming peace. A peace that does not resemble emotional relief alone, but structural harmony, as if the soul has aligned perfectly with its original design. There is no rush, no panic, no chaos, only order. The Most High is not a creator of confusion. If birth was intentional, then so is arrival beyond the veil. There is structure to eternity. There is purpose beyond departure. Many describe reunion, not symbolic reunion, but recognition. Loved ones known instantly, no introductions needed, no uncertainty. Identity without disguise. If consciousness continues, then relationship does not vanish. The body was the vehicle, the spirit was the traveler. When the vehicle is laid down, the traveler continues. This is why death feels so final in the third dimension, because we are attached to the vehicle. We love the voice, the laugh, the embrace. We remember the posture, the eyes, the way they entered a room. But the essence of who they were was never skin and bone. It was consciousness. It was spirit, and spirit does not decay. What follows ascension also includes restoration. If suffering belonged to the body, then freedom belongs to the spirit. The one who struggled to breathe no longer gasps. The one who suffered memory loss remembers fully. The one who is bound to a bed stands unrestricted, not because the body was repaired, because the body is no longer needed. Time behaves differently beyond the veil. What feels long to us is not measured the same way there. This is why the idea of reunion does not stretch endlessly in eternity. The gap we feel may not feel like a gap at all from their perspective. For the righteous and the innocent, the prepared place is not abstract. It is real in ways that exceed earthly architecture. It is not clouds and empty space. It is structured existence without corruption, no decay, no injustice, no betrayal, no sickness. But ascension is not merely arrival. It is continuation. The life review has already revealed truth. The crossing has already released suffering. What follows is alignment with a realm where the Most High's order operates without resistance. This does not mean every detail is fully known to us now. The third dimension is not given full disclosure of eternity. If it were, faith would not exist. Choice would be compromised. But enough patterns have surfaced through testimony, scripture, and experience to understand one thing clearly: death is not extinction. It is unveiling. The veil separates perception, not existence. And once crossed, the spirit does not wish to return to confinement. Those who have briefly experienced it and came back often say the same thing: they did not want to leave. Not because they rejected loved ones on earth, but because what awaited beyond felt more real than what they had known before. More solid, more alive, more true. The third dimension is preparation. Ascension is arrival. And what follows is not an ending, but a life without limitation. The story does not close at the grave. It opens beyond it. Chapter 8. For those who remain, ascension transforms the one who departs, but it reshapes the ones who stay. The living are left standing in a quiet room, holding memories in place of hands. The air feels heavier. The world feels slightly unfamiliar. Even the sun rising the next morning can feel intrusive, as if it should have paused out of respect. But life in the third dimension continues. Bills must still be paid. Children must still be fed. Work still calls. The calendar still turns. And this continuation can feel almost offensive in the early days of grief. How can the world move when ours has stopped? Yet this movement is not betrayal. It is design. The Most High did not intend for grief to freeze the living. Mourning is sacred, but so is endurance. Tears are natural, but so is resilience. If the one who ascended is no longer suffering, then the weight remaining belongs only to us, and how we carry that weight matters. Grief has stages: shock, denial, anger, deep sorrow, reflection, acceptance. They do not arrive in order, they circle, they revisit. Some days are light, some days are unexpectedly heavy. But grief is not meant to destroy, it is meant to transform. When someone we love ascends, we are confronted with our own mortality, the illusion of endless time fractures. We realize how fragile the body is, how temporary routines are, how quickly seasons change. This awareness can either produce fear or wisdom. If life flashes before the eyes at ascension, then life should be lived intentionally before that moment arrives. Forgive quickly, speak truth gently, love openly, release pride. Do not postpone reconciliation, because no one controls the hour of departure. The moment of ascension is certain for all, though its timing remains hidden. This is not meant to inspire anxiety. It is meant to awaken awareness. The living have work to do, to prepare their spirits, to align with righteousness, to pursue justice, to protect innocence, to walk humbly before the Most High. When we understand that death is transition rather than extinction, fear begins to lose its dominance. It does not disappear completely. The unknown still humbles us, but it no longer rules us. The grave is not a wall, it is a doorway. For those who remain, the challenge is this: will grief close your heart or deepen it? Will loss make you bitter or make you wiser? Will sorrow isolate you or soften you toward others who are suffering? The one who ascended has completed their earthly assignment. You have not. Their departure should not paralyze your purpose. It should refine it. Live in a way that when your moment of ascension arrives, there is peace in your spirit. Live in a way that your life flash will not be filled with regret over withheld love or unnecessary cruelty. The third dimension is temporary training ground. Eternity is not. The separation hurts, but it is not permanent from the perspective of the spirit. Reunion is not fantasy. It is promise woven into the design of existence itself. So mourn, but do not despair. Remember, but do not collapse. Honor the one who ascended by living righteously in the days you still possess. Because one day your breath will quiet, the room will fall still, and your moment of ascension will arrive. And when it does, may it not meet you unprepared. Chapter 9. The fear of death and the freedom from it. There is one shadow that follows every human being, whether acknowledged or denied. The fear of death. Some silence it with distraction. Some bury it under ambition. Some mask it with humor. Some try to outrun it with youth, wealth, or status. But it remains, not always loud, but present. The fear of death is not merely the fear of pain. It is the fear of the unknown, the fear of losing control, the fear of ceasing to exist, the fear of judgment, the fear of separation. It is the final uncertainty of the third dimension. But what if the fear is rooted not in death itself, but in misunderstanding it? If ascension is transition, not extinction, if consciousness continues beyond breath, if suffering ends at separation from flesh, if the Most High governs the crossing, then death is not chaos. It is order misunderstood. The third dimension trains us to cling. We cling to time, to relationships, to possessions, to identity. The body becomes our anchor, and because we identify so strongly with the body, the idea of losing it feels like losing ourselves. But you are not your body. You inhabit it. The body ages. The spirit does not age the same way. The body weakens. The spirit can remain sharp. The body can forget. The spirit can still perceive. Even in advanced illness, when memory fades and personality shifts, families often say, "That's not really them anymore." They instinctively recognize that the essence of a person is deeper than the brain. So if the essence is deeper than the brain, then the shutting down of the brain does not necessarily mean the shutting down of the essence. Fear diminishes when understanding increases. This is why many who experience near-death events return with less fear. They often say the same thing: I'm not afraid anymore. Not because they became reckless, not because they reject life, but because they tasted continuity. The fear of death thrives in mystery. The freedom from fear grows in clarity. This does not mean one should rush toward death. Life is sacred. The body is a gift. The time given here has purpose. But fearing the inevitable does not add days to existence. It only steals peace from the present. The Most High did not design life to end in meaningless silence. Creation is too structured. Consciousness is too complex. Love is too powerful to conclude in nothingness. If love feels eternal, perhaps it is because it originates from something eternal. Death exposes what we truly believe. If one lives selfishly, death feels threatening because it interrupts control. If one lives rebelliously, death feels alarming because it introduces accountability. If one lives aligned, death feels like transition because it fulfills expectation. The fear of death can become a teacher. It asks, are you prepared? Have you forgiven? Have you made peace? Have you aligned your spirit? These questions are not meant to terrify. They are meant to awaken. When preparation replaces avoidance, fear begins to shrink. You cannot control the hour of ascension, but you can control the condition of your spirit when it arrives. Live reconciled, live justly, live aware. The grave is certain, but it is not ultimate. The body will rest, the spirit will rise. And when fear loses its grip, something powerful happens. You begin to truly live, not cautiously, not anxiously, but purposefully, because you understand that this dimension is temporary, and temporary things are meant to be used wisely, not worshipped. Death is not your enemy. Unpreparedness is, and preparation begins now. Chapter 10. The Promise Beyond the Grave. A grave is not a conclusion. It is a marker. A stone may bear a name. Two dates separated by a line: birth, death. But that line between the dates does not contain the fullness of a life, and the second date does not contain the end of it. The grave holds the body. It does not hold the spirit. From the beginning, humanity has wrestled with mortality. We build monuments to resist it. We tell stories to preserve memory. We fear burial because it looks like finality. The earth closes. The ceremony ends. The mourners return home. But the spirit does not descend into silence. It ascends into promise. The promise beyond the grave is not fantasy built to soothe pain. It is woven into the very structure of justice and consciousness. If life were only biological, then love would be chemical. Meaning would be accidental. Sacrifice would be irrational. Yet love feels eternal. Justice feels necessary. Conscience feels real. These are not illusions of flesh. They are indicators of something higher. The Most High does not create consciousness only to extinguish it. He does not breathe spirit into form merely to erase it at the first sign of decay. The body was temporary from the beginning. The spirit was not. The grave receives dust. Heaven receives breath. This is the promise. For the innocent, there is welcome. For the righteous, there is rest. For the just, there is fulfillment. For those who have sought mercy, there is mercy. The promise beyond the grave does not deny accountability. It confirms that accountability leads somewhere purposeful. The life review reveals truth, but truth does not end in annihilation. It leads to placement. Every soul arrives somewhere, not by accident, not by drift, but by alignment. The third dimension trains us for eternity. Every choice shapes direction. Every act reflects posture. Every intention forms trajectory. Death is not a coin flip. It is a crossing. And beyond that crossing stands the fulfillment of divine order. This is why hope survives funerals. This is why, even in tears, there is a quiet whisper in the human heart that says, "This is not the end, because it is not." Reunion is not sentimental imagination. It is consistent with continuity. If consciousness remains, if identity persists, if spirit ascends, then separation is temporary within eternity. Time divides. Eternity restores. The one you buried is not beneath the soil in the way you fear. The soil holds what was shed. What mattered most was never confined to bone. The promise beyond the grave is not escape from reality. It is the unveiling of the greater one. And when your moment of ascension arrives, when the room grows quiet, when breath becomes thin, when the veil softens, you will not be stepping into darkness. You will be stepping into fulfillment. The grave will not close your story. It will release it. What was temporary will fall away. What was eternal will rise. And the promise that seemed distant while you walked in flesh will stand before you, no longer believed by faith alone, but seen in clarity. The grave is not the end. It is the doorway to what was prepared from the beginning. And beyond it, the promise stands, unbroken, unwavering, eternal. When the breath becomes light, in the end, it always comes back to a breath. One breath enters a newborn's lungs and a life begins. One breath leaves an aging body and a life transitions. Between those two breaths is a story, filled with love, mistakes, growth, wounds, forgiveness, laughter, and longing. But the final breath is not collapse. It is release. The room may grow still. Hands may tighten. Tears may fall onto sheets. Voices may whisper goodbye, yet what appears to end in silence is not silence at all. It is movement. The spirit, no longer confined, rises beyond the limitations it once carried. The pain of disease remains with the body. The weight of age remains with the flesh. The sorrow belongs to those still bound to time, but the one who ascends does not carry suffering forward. They step into clarity. This is the truth the third dimension struggles to accept. Death is not defeat. It is transition. We grieve because we love. We mourn because connection was real. But love does not dissolve at the edge of the grave. It does not weaken in the soil. It does not fade in eternity. Love is evidence that we were made for more than temporary existence. So live in that awareness. Live prepared. Live reconciled. Live in a way that when your moment comes, there is no panic in your spirit, only recognition, because the veil is thin. The promise is real, and the breath that leaves you will not fall into darkness. It will become light, and beyond the grave, beyond the silence, beyond the sorrow, you will not be lost. You will be home. And that concludes this volume of the Moment of Ascension. We've explored the final breath, the separation of soul and body, the promise prepared beyond the grave, and the hope reserved for the innocent and the righteous. Remember, death is not the end. It is transition, and how we live now shapes what awaits us beyond the veil. If this message spoke to your spirit, like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss out on the next volume of the Book of Books.